Hi there, Rockstar, and welcome to this short mini-sode of Stand Out, Get Noticed. If you're fairly new to the podcast, my name's Christina Canters. I run a business called The C Method, where I'm all about helping high-performing professionals to develop strong communication skills in the workplace. And that's what this podcast is all about, helping you to build up your confidence, build your communication skills, your speaking skills and leadership so that you can stand out and be the best that you can be and fulfill your potential at work. Now, I've been running this podcast since March 2015. So by the time you hear this, it will be almost at the 5-year anniversary, which is really, really exciting. Now, I started the podcast I started the podcast when I started my business. When I started my business, I had very little experience as a coach. I used to be an architect and I left that industry to start my own business and to create more meaningful work for myself. And I discovered that I loved coaching, I loved speaking, I loved facilitating and helping people to learn and to learn more about themselves, learn new skills and learn how they can be more successful in the workplace. And I started this podcast 5 years ago as a way to build up my credibility, to show people who I was, showcase what I knew, and to also build my network, through being able to interview great people. And it's been, 5 years now, over 250 episodes and over 1.8 million downloads. It's been such a pleasure and an honor to create this podcast for you every single week. And if you've been listening since the very beginning, then huge shout out to you. Thank you so much for your support. This podcast has been it's been such a great learning experience for me. I've gone through many different stages of my own development. One of the key things with this podcast in particular was doing my solo episodes and not editing, for example. That was a huge step for me to get beyond the fear of having to be perfect and not show any, human mistakes. And it took me years to get over that. It took me years to be able to speak on this podcast without a script. I used to script every single piece word for word and I would read it out because I could not trust myself to go off script. Again, being a bit of a perfectionist. So it took me years to reach the point where I could just speak off dot points. And now, what I'm doing now is I'm speaking with zero notes at all. I decided, I want to share a message and this is what I'm going to do. So I personally have developed a lot in my communication skills and building up my own confidence too. So it's been a huge benefit to both me personally, also to my business in terms of growing my brand. And some of you might know this, it's led to me starting a podcast development and training company with my husband, Aaron. Building up this skill and building up the success with this show led to other people saying, hey, Christina, can you teach me how to podcast? Can you help me set up a podcast? So that led me to starting Podcast Services Australia. So that's been, one of a few of the key developments of this show and what's come from the show. And of course, not to mention all the people that I've had the privilege of impacting over the years. Maybe some of you have discovered this podcast only recently. Maybe some of you have been with me since the very beginning, maybe even before this podcast when I started my very first podcast. That was a while ago. Whoever you are, however long you've been listening, I want to say, a huge thank you for your support. And it's been such an honor to be able to impact you and help you. You're probably wondering, Christina, are you like ending the podcast? It's like a farewell speech. No, I'm not. I'm not ending the podcast. But what I did want to share with you today was some important changes that I will be making to this podcast moving forward. And it's quite a drastic change, something that I hadn't considered up until recently, but I've been following my intuition lately. And this has come up for me where I thought, you know what? I think it's time. So, as you know, or some of you may know, I launched my membership site, the C Method Academy, last year in October. And this was my way of creating a supportive community of people who listen to the podcast, want to take the concepts from the podcast and apply them and learn in a supportive environment and take the learnings to a deeper level. Because something that one reason why I started that was because something I noticed was that people would write to me and say, "Oh, Christina, I love the podcast. I really enjoy listening to it." And I'd write back and say, "Oh, that's fantastic. What have you implemented?" Because, I'm always keen to know. And they'll write back and say, "Oh, I don't know. I haven't really implemented anything, but I just like listening. I like the sound of your voice." And to me, I'm like, okay, that's all well and good, but if you're not implementing what you learned, then it's not really impacting you. It's not making a difference in your life. And I know I'm exactly the same. I've listened to countless podcasts and I've read so many books, so many articles, watched videos where I've gone, "Oh yeah, it's a great concept," but never actually applied it. Or even, let's say, gone to a conference or even received advice from someone and never implemented. And I work with people one-on-one. So I have clients come to me and I get them to fill out an application form on the website. And people will, one of the questions on that form is, what have you done so far about this challenge? Because I ask, what's a challenge you're having that you need help with? They'll say, I want to progress more, or, I get nervous when I'm speaking in public, or, etc. And I'll say, so what have you done about this challenge on your own and what hasn't worked for you? And the number of people who say, "Oh, I've tried watching videos, I listen to podcasts, I read books, but I'm still not implementing." So, I'm getting people coming to me for one-on-one help, or they join my group coaching program and they might have listened to a ton of podcasts, but they haven't actually implemented anything. And this is really, really common. And it's understandable. It's totally understandable because when you listen to a podcast, there's no accountability there. There's no one there to say, "Hey, did you do that thing that you heard about in that podcast?" It's just not a thing. So I've come to realize, there's a lot of people listening to the podcast, but not necessarily implementing what they're learning. And my goal here is to impact as many people as possible, but really help them to make a change. And I know that one of the things that is missing, that something the podcast does not provide, is that supportive community, that supportive environment where you feel that you are not alone, where you know that you are not the only person going through these challenges. You are not the only person who suffers anxiety when put on the spot. You're not the only person who freaks out about sharing an idea in a meeting. You're not the only person who goes blank when speaking to a group. And having that and providing that supportive community and accountability is what encourages people to actually make that change. And also to celebrate in the wins. That's what we do a lot of in the Academy. We celebrate people's achievements, even if they don't seem, massive. It can be something really simple, such as, "I sat at the front of a meeting today," or "I was the first to speak." These seemingly small things. "I struck up a conversation with someone." These are what lead to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And that's what leads to real development. And a lot of people don't celebrate these successes. So that's the thing that I wanted to provide with the Academy. So anyway, back to the podcast. I had this idea. So what I've decided is, I'm like, okay, people aren't implementing what they learn in the podcast. The Academy provides all sorts of support and provides that missing piece. How can I combine the two? So here's what I'm going to do. Okay. I'm going to continue producing the podcast once a week. So once a week, you still get your new episode, but only a certain number of new episodes will be available to listen to for free on to the public. All right. So there's going to be 30 podcasts, 30 new podcasts available to the public, plus a few older ones from the back catalogue. And then all the rest of them, so the 200 plus other episodes are going to be available only to people who are part of the Academy. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take those podcast episodes and we're going to form study groups around them. We're going to form masterclasses around them, and we're going to make it a real, we're going to make a conscious decision to focus on, we're going to highlight each of those episodes one by one and work on the concepts that have been touched on, explained. We dive into those concepts in the podcast. We're going to work on those and we're going to create exercises around them, and we're going to implement what we've learned there. So that's what's going to be happening with the podcast. I know it's a kind of a scary thing for me to do this because I'm not sure how you're going to react. You might be like, "Oh, we hate you, Christina," and I'm just going to have to be okay with that. I might get a drop in listeners. I might get a drop in downloads, but all of these things, I'm thinking about the bigger picture and what it is that I really want for my audience and the impact that I want to make for you as well as for my business. And this is the decision that I've come up with. I know it's really interesting. One of my, a quote that's come up for me quite a lot recently has been, "What got you here won't get you there." I can't remember who said it, but I think it's the name of a book as well. "What got you here won't get you there." And I know that for the first, few years of my business, doing my podcast the way that I've been doing it has got me to this point. So it's helped me to build my brand and my credibility and build my business really successfully. But now I know for me to take what I'm doing to the next level, I've got to change things up. And this is the decision that I've made to do. So, like I said, so to quickly recap, you'll still get your episodes every week, but each time a new episode comes out, an old one's going to drop off and it's going to become the domain of Academy members only. So we're going to start making these changes from the start of next week. So if you're like, "Oh my God, Christina, I want to keep all your episodes," then you've got until next week, until Monday, to download everything. Otherwise, don't be shocked when you see that the back catalogue has been removed from your podcast feed. But look, there's still going to be heaps of episodes there. There's going to be many there for you to listen to, and there's still going to be one every single week. So you'll still be hearing from me. But otherwise, if you're an Academy member, you've got a lot of really exciting things to look forward to. And if you're interested in joining the Academy, we have closed registrations at the moment. But as I'm working together, I'm going to be working really hard over the next few weeks, the next month, to get it all up and running and getting this new process in place. We're going to be opening up the registrations again in the coming months. So keep an ear out for that, and I will let you know what the Academy looks like and where you can register if you are keen to join in and to be part of that supportive group. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you tuning in and hearing this update. Also, thanks again for being a listener, for being a supporter. And I'm really looking forward to this next new chapter of the Stand Out Get Noticed podcast and my business, The C Method, as well. All right, have an amazing week, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.